It is the penultimate Sunday in August of 2015, and I am just in the middle of my alternative spiritual practice of protesting against Unitarian Universalist injustices, abuses, and hypocrisy. And I got a couple of people coming this way. Not too bad. Not too bad. It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. So, as I was saying, I'm in the middle of my little protest. And the primary issue we're protesting, the primary issue we've been protesting for some time now, is the fact that top-level leaders of the Unitarian Universalist Association in Boston, who happen to be atheist Unitarians, specifically UUA President Reverend Dr. Peter Morales, and also now retired UUA Executive Vice President Kathleen K. Montgomery, hired Stikeman Elliott Barristers and Solicitors Litigation Lawyer, Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe, to have me served with an arrogant and aggressive cease and desist demand letter, which falsely accused me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel, which is still in the Canadian Criminal Code. Canada actually does have a law prohibiting blasphemy, or what they call blasphemous libel, against religions. And they did so in an effort to cover up and hide the fact that certain Unitarian Universalist ministers are in fact guilty of engaging in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. So essentially, you know, this was a case of Bill Cosby style legal bullying, or if you want to use another example, Lance Armstrong style legal bullying. Basically, you know, the client knows perfectly well what the truth is, but in an effort to cover up and hide the truth, they threaten, you know, a person with a libel suit or even possible criminal charges and so on. I should add that the criminal act of blasphemous libel, if one is convicted, carries a jail sentence of up to 2 years. So in theory, if I was actually charged, tried, and convicted of the criminal act of blasphemous libel for actually telling the truth about Unitarian Universalist pedophiles and rapists, I could spend 2 years in jail. So as far as I'm concerned, if anything is despicable, besides of course the despicable crimes of pedophilia and rape, which obviously are despicable, what is also despicable is this immoral, unethical, borderline criminal, because when you falsely accuse a person of a crime, if you take that false accusation of a crime to the police and try to have the person charged with that crime, well then you're committing the criminal act of public mischief. So the UUA, in falsely accusing me of blasphemous libel, criminal act, was one step away from basically going to the police and lying to them about what I'm doing in an effort to have me charged with blasphemous libel, in an effort to punish me for telling the truth about Unitarian Universalist pedophiles and rapists. That's why I say that this legal bullying, in addition to being immoral and unethical, is itself almost criminal. Very, very close to being outright criminal in a real sense. And what do you know? To cover up crimes such as pedophilia and rape. So yes, truly despicable behavior on the part of the Unitarian Universalist Association as an institution, on the part of UUA President Reverend Dr. Peter Morales as a top-level UUA leader, despicable behavior on the part of Kathleen K. Montgomery, the now retired Executive Vice President of the UUA, who would have been the person who had the most hands-on responsibility for orchestrating this Bill Cosby style legal bullying. And based on what I know about Unitarian Universalist cover-up and denial of clergy sexual misconduct, I have very, very reasonable grounds to believe that this is not the first time that Kay Montgomery has been involved in legal bullying that attempts to cover up and hide clergy sexual misconduct, or otherwise, otherwise using legal intimidation and so on, coercion, to try and hide clergy sexual misconduct. In fact, there's evidence which strongly suggests that Kathleen Kay Montgomery was or could have been involved in attempts by the Unitarian Universalist Association to cover up and hide Reverend Mac W. Mitchell's rape of teenage Tibetan refugees as far back as the early 1990s. There is a newspaper report, at least one, which makes it clear that there was an effort on the part of the Unitarian Universalist Church. It's not clear if it was the local congregations who made this effort or if it was the UUA, but I strongly suspect it would have been with UUA involvement. There was an attempt to try to persuade Reverend Mac Mitchell's victims to sign confidentiality agreements, which essentially, they would agree not to say anything about what happened, presumably in exchange for some money or something. So there was an effort to do this, to basically either cajole or coerce or intimidate the victims into signing a confidentiality agreement. But what happened is that some members of Reverend Mac W. Mitchell's church, who had been told about the rapes by one of the victims, in fact the first victim to come forward, they thought the best thing to do was to report this to the police and let the police investigate and deal with it. So that's what they did. And in reporting, the alleged rapes, because at the times they were alleged, he hadn't actually been proven guilty at that point. In doing that, they made it impossible for the UUA or the local church to have the girls sign a confidentiality agreement. It was already out in the open. The police were investigating, and as a result of their investigation, as I said, Reverend Mac W. Mitchell was arrested, charged, tried, found guilty of forcible rape and other sex crimes, including, I think, unnatural intercourse and this and that, and sentenced to a jail term, and spent several years in the jail in Massachusetts. So yeah, it's really pretty pathetic, pretty despicable, the lengths that Unitarian Universalists will go to try and cover up and hide such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape in their religious community. So that's the main issue today. It's not the only one, but it's the one that's up front, and I've been protesting, for some time now. I didn't, run out right away with picket signs. Well, actually, very soon after receiving the letter, I actually did protest, but I didn't make any new picket signs. I made some chalk slogans, I think, like the one that's down there on the ground. But I didn't actually make any new picket signs, and I basically tried to give the UUA an opportunity to, withdraw the accusation, apologize for bringing it against me, and now, tell the truth about, how many ministers have actually been convicted of such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. How many do you know about? Because they certainly do know about cases. So tell the truth about how many have actually been convicted. And maybe you should also tell the truth about how many have been credibly accused, even if they haven't actually been convicted. How many other cases are there where ministers have been quite credibly accused of pedophilia and rape, even if they haven't actually been convicted? Good day yet. So they never did that. So for some time now I've been protesting. Got a person reading the picket sign here. This is another aspect of the story, actually. Sue Montgomery, the Gazette's justice reporter, now in quotation marks retired, just like Kathleen Kay Montgomery retired as the executive vice president of the UUA not too long after I challenged her insane blasphemous libel accusation against me, because she, as I said, was the person who would have had the most hands-on responsibility for the legal bullying. Part of her job as the executive vice president of the UUA is to coordinate the work of the Unitarian Universalist Association's attorneys. So that would have meant coordinating the work of Stikeman Elliott Barristers and Solicitors litigation lawyer, Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe. And most ironically, and this is where the hypocrisy just gets ludicrous, Kay Montgomery, as part of her job, as part of her coordination of the efforts of the attorneys of the UUA, actually in 2010 had the UUA sign on to an amicus brief which basically protested against the use of blasphemy law in the United States. It was a particular case. I'm afraid off the top of my head I can't remember the actual name of the person accused, but it was in Pennsylvania if I'm not mistaken, and a person was accused of blasphemy under Pennsylvania's blasphemy law, and the UUA signed on to an amicus brief protesting this use of blasphemy law on the grounds that it was unconstitutional. And yet, a couple of years later, the UUA is accusing me of blasphemous libel in an effort to cover up and hide pedophilia and rape. So I think I can reasonably conjecture that, Kathleen Kay Montgomery, being aware of how the blasphemy law, was being used in the United States, decided, oh, let's see if Canada has a blasphemy law. Maybe we can accuse Robin of blasphemy. Maybe that'll shut him up. Maybe that'll force him to remove, blog posts that aren't very flattering to us. So yeah, let's see if Canada has a blasphemy law. I'm pretty sure, I think I can reasonably conjecture that, that as a result of the work involved in signing on to this amicus brief in 2010, which was protesting against the use of blasphemy laws in the United States on the grounds that they violated the United States Constitution. This inspired Kay Montgomery and perhaps other UUA leaders to, hey, let's accuse Robin of blasphemy, if we can, and get him to shut up about our pedophiles and rapists and so on. So anyway, getting back to the Sue Montgomery sign, I don't know if Sue Montgomery is a relation of Kay Montgomery. I would assume not. I'm assuming it's just a coincidence that they share the same family name, but who knows, maybe Sue Montgomery is a relative of Kay Montgomery, possibly even a close one, maybe a niece or something like that. Anyway, Sue Montgomery was told about the UUA's misuse of blasphemy law in 2012, and she was asked to report the story by me as part of her job as the Gazette's so-called justice reporter. This is a serious justice issue. Of course, Sue refused to report the story. So Sue Montgomery essentially is guilty of complicity in Unitarian Universalist cover-up and denial of hey, until they retract, I got a protest. This guy's walking by and shaking his head a little bit. There's a guy who comes by most Sundays. He's seen me for a while, so he's probably just shaking his head because he sees me fairly frequently. But my policy is, look, until such a time as some real justice is done, well, I'm going to do this protest here if I got nothing better to do on a Sunday. And as it happens, I had nothing better to do this morning, really. There are a couple other things I could have done, but they're things that I could have done later. So I decided to come along and do my little protest. Anyway, getting back to the sign here. This is a very, very truthful statement. There's some minor little inaccuracies that aren't necessarily inaccuracies, but it's essentially very, very true. So, pre-teen children have been raped by Unitarian Universalist clergy, to say nothing of UU Sunday school teachers, etc. But the Gazette's so-called justice reporter, Sue Montgomery, never reported UUA misuse of blasphemy law and clergy abuse cover-up legal bullying. Very, very truthful statement. The only quibble is about the pre-teen aspect there, and specifically being raped. There's no question that preteen girls have been molested, sexually abused by Unitarian Universalist ministers. But in terms of actual outright rape, the cases that I'm aware of involve teenagers, not preteen girls. So again, just to be totally accurate, preteen children, children under 13 years old, have definitely been sexually molested by Unitarian Universalist ministers, and those ministers have, some of them, not all of them necessarily, but some of them have actually been charged, tried, convicted, sentenced to jail terms for their molestation of preteen children. But there's no question that some teenagers have been outright raped, full sexual intercourse by a Unitarian Universalist minister by the name of Reverend Mac W. Mitchell. That's the one that's most famous and most well known and most on the public record. Doesn't mean there aren't some others. So that's the only real quibble here is the preteen there, which I may well correct. I might change it to helpless children have been raped by Unitarian Universalist clergy. But for the time being, that stands as is because it's essentially true. It depends upon what the meaning of the word raped is. Rape, as a rule, means full-on sexual intercourse. But in fact, the way Sue Montgomery has been using it in this "Being Raped, Never Reported" hashtag campaign, it's being broadened out to include sexual harassment and other sexual abuse that isn't necessarily full-on sexual intercourse. So if Sue Montgomery can use the word raped somewhat loosely in the "Being Raped, Never Reported" hashtag campaign, I think I can do the same thing on my picket sign here. So that's it for now, and just going to shut this down because the sensor is overheating a bit, and we're also getting to the time limit of the 17 plus minutes of filming without a break. So that's it for now. Sunday, the penultimate Sunday in August 2015.